Have you ever woke up in the middle of a dream and the dream was so interesting that you wanted to go back to sleep to see the end of it? If so, what was the dream? The one that I still think of sometimes is that I was sitting around with my wife and a couple of friends playing cards and I hear a couple of plops on the table. I look down and two of my fingertips are there, left index and left ring. No blood, no pain. My hand looks like the nubs people have years after losing a finger in an accident. The detached fingertips still look healthy and the formerly attached ends appear the same as my nubs, healed, sealed over with skin. I mention my calamity and say I need to go to the hospital and my friend thinks I'm overreacting since there's zero blood and zero pain. My wife reluctantly takes me in. The dream cuts to the hospital where I have a couple of doctors just kinda shrugging and going, well, if there's no pain, we don't see a problem. And that is when I woke up. Was watching a football game on the yard outside of my childhood home. One team featured Fraser Crane as the star player. The other team's star was Jesus Christ, wearing a white gown and sandals. Jesus was unstoppable. He ran a sweep to the right on every play and once he hit the corner, he was gone. A touchdown on every play. Fraser Crane would throw a touchdown pass to a cousin of mine on every play. The dream ended before the game was over so I would have liked to continue watching to see if anyone ever could tackle Jesus or sack Mr. Crane. I have two reoccurring dreams, probably half a dozen times each, and every time I wake up mid-story if you can call it that. In one, I have all the powers of Spider-Man, and I literally have to fight armies of demons and orcs emerging from a crack in the earth. These dreams are always amazing. Very cinematic MCU-style combat in urban environments against Hellspawn, and alongside like SWAT guys and stuff. And they always feel so real. In the other one, Abraham Lincoln shows up and is flying around like Superman. Once or twice I've gotten to ride on his back while he flies. That's it, that's the dream. I never know WTF it's supposed to be about. I was a detective in the 1960s, chasing a man who killed women while they were home alone, including my wife, on the night I stayed back at the cop shop working on his case. I found the warehouse he was living in. It was definitely him. He taped all his trophies, the hair of his victims, to the back wall. My wife's ponytail, her bright red hair, was taped to the dirty concrete wall. I raised my gun at him, telling him it was over. He smiled at me, a horrible smile with rotting teeth. It is over. I'm going to wake you up. And when you wake up, you'll disappear. And I'll kill again. Perhaps I'll pay your daughter a visit. I tried to ask him what he meant. But then I woke up in my bedroom. In the dream my girl and I are doing something routine and average. Perhaps shopping, or driving in our car, or cooking. It's always something mundane, but just knowing she is there with me fills me with overwhelming love and joy. I always reach out to tell her that I'm in love with her, that this small moment, even though insignificant, is amazing to me because she is there, and because we're together and happy. I go to say these words to her but, every single time, all that comes out of my mouth is I'm sorry. Just then she'll turn to look at me and that's when I always wake up, startled, words choking in my throat, heartbroken. The rest of the day will be a gray blur, slow as it's happening, but a blur when I think back on it. I go through the ritual of daily life. Smiling when I'm supposed to smile lest someone asks me if something wrong. A decade of enduring that so far. She's gone forever and I'll be cursed with that dream till I die, I think. This is a long one. I used to dream about nuclear war and the aftermath a lot. In one dream, the bombs had fallen and vehicles were gone BC of no gas anymore. So I was walking in MPLS. All the buildings were boarded up and there were people everywhere. At the head of an alley, there was a fence and people were gathered to watch an entertainer. I stood there and a guy with a long beard and wearing a robe came out from behind the fence and started dancing. It was more like Tai Chi, but I noticed that when he moved his arms or legs, there was a barely visible blue flame trailing behind. It was beautiful and he wasn't being hurt by it. Then I looked down and there was a basket of puppies, but they were on fire with the same blue flames and they were being harmed by it, but slowly and with no sound. I looked around and no one else seemed to notice it. I tried to put it out and couldn't and had to watch them all die. Then the dancer went back behind the fence into the alley. Then I knew something, like in dreams when you don't hear a voice but just know it. Dream knowledge or whatever. The guy was Jesus and since he couldn't suffer and die again, everyone would have to suffer smaller things and all that suffering would make up for our sins and to redeem us. Watching puppies burn to death was my suffering. I woke up wanting to go in the alley and say WTF? I once had an incredibly vivid dream that I was on a bus and a few rows in front of me sat my, several years before deceased, grandpa. I was looking at him and hoping that it was really him when he turned to look at me and winked, something he always did, and in the way that was particular to him. I stood up to go and sit closer to him and we were just about to start talking when I woke up. I tried so desperately to go back to sleep and have that conversation with him, but it never happened. Now, I don't believe that it was him visiting me, rather my brain creating something that I would dearly love. But it's a nice thought. I probably had this dream 10 years ago, or maybe more, and I still regularly think about it. I had a dream that I woke up middle in the sea in a warship and thought my real life was dream. Then I learned that we won a war in my country and going back to home. I met a Gurk soldier in the ship, we got along so well. When we got to home, weirdly it was Norway and it was 1890s, I am from Turkey. But the thing is, my dream country is Norway. So I got so happy when I got in Norway. I met more people in warship that some of them became my best friends. Now I don't want to explain the whole story after this, but basically I married the girl I met, had children, had best friends, and lived a happy life. Got in some more war, but I managed to survive all. And then I woke up and was back in this shithole life. I was a traveling salesman going door to door, having no real success until I knock upon the door of a comely red-headed woman in a very tight workout outfit. Things start looking up when she invites me in. Things are really looking up when next thing I know, we are rolling around on the floor making out, half naked. Then all of a sudden I hear the door open, someone step in and shout, "Wendy, what are you doing?" I look up, it was fucking Dave Thomas, the founder of Wendy's. I then woke up and starting laughing out loud. I was boarding a weird-ass plane with some family. Some regular stuff happened, then the pilot, who was an actual idiot, started to fly too close to the ground. I don't remember why. Anyways, obviously, we crashed. Some people died obviously, but I survived. Weirdly, the scene of me falling out looked like it was on the National Geographic Channel. Anyways, I survived, but my legs didn't. So I had to start living in a wheelchair, which wasn't too bad. I did have a hard time getting up this sort of porch thought. As soon as I got up, I woke up. I really want to see what happened next, but I never managed to return to it. Super late to the post, so I doubt anyone will see this, but I had a partner. We'd been together for decades and we'd lived a genuinely fulfilling life. Kids, a home, friends. It was vaguely fantastical and we'd been part of the whole saving the world trope in some meaningful way. Not the main characters, but we'd helped. And then I discovered something horrible. No idea what it was, but it sent us all back in time to when we'd only first met. Back when the world was still under threat. In my anger at whatever it was, I denounced them publicly to a good friend of ours who was someone important. A captain of the guard or the local director or something along those lines. They denied it, my partner, but there were recordings of our lives from before time had gone back, things that had been saved somehow, and eventually they admitted to whatever it was I accused them of. But at that very moment I was hit by an absolutely overwhelming wave of terror, that I was making a mistake. Even now, years after the dream, I remember screaming in fear and rushing to their side, even if every other detail has faded away. As I held them, I remember all the memories running through my head. But I don't remember what any of them are, and this is the bit that has made me so desperate to go back. Before I woke, my partner leaned in close and whispered in my ear, not in their voice but the voice of the trickster god that we defeated before time had reversed, and they laughed. The last thing I heard before jerking awake was that I'd given up everything, and they'd finally won. I woke up absolutely drenched in sweat, terrified out of my mind, with a horrible pain in my chest. The scariest thing, I knew that all those memories fading away were signs that the evil god was erasing the life I'd had. Our kids, our friends, everything. And as the dream faded, I realized I was forgetting the details. By the time I started writing it down, I couldn't remember the names of the kids I vividly recalled having, or my partner, or what they looked like. All I remember is that I couldn't forget, that if I forgot I'd never be able to undo what he'd done. But years later I still don't remember. Every few months I'll remember that I still don't know, and it'll take me days to get over it. I hope one day I'll have the dream again and I can remember another detail. I had a dream that was entirely in stained glass. Like the whole thing was like a kaleidoscope of colors, and there were dragons and battles and a magnificent ball with a queen in red, which is where I woke up. I have never had a dream like this before or since. There was also another dream where it seemed to be some sort of mid-apocalypse situation with monsters. I was being taken care of by some military-type folks after they found me just wandering the snowy woods. But the most fascinating part was the faceless samurai in red. He wasn't on my group's side, but he wasn't a direct threat either. I was certain I knew him because I wasn't worried about him. I really want to know how it ends, but I've never had this one again either. In a beautiful city with Art Nouveau aesthetic, I was a male lover of a detective, also male, that went missing without a trace. I was also an investigator, working with him, but I was either his subordinate or I hadn't got as much experience as him. My beloved disappeared and I continued his investigations all across the city, talking with the same witnesses, trying to solve not only his mysterious disappearance, but also the case he had been originally working on. My progress alternated with sepia-colored flashbacks of him being in the same place, having the same conversations. I'm delivering an inner monologue through all of this, narrating my progress, how I miss him, how I hope he's still alive, but I'm growing more and more depressed. I got a tip for an abandoned mine/factory just outside of the city, on a hillside resembling cliffs of Dover. There was a still functioning railroad track leading to it, crawling along the cliffs in a steep trail, turning at 90 degrees at one point. How the steam locomotive with carriage wagons overcome it, I have no idea. The railroad ended in a station carved in the cliffside, and what a station it was. From the outside it looked like those three-faced Buddhist goddess statues, but more Art Deco-ish. Only the head was actually carved in the cliffside, the front-looking face watching over the city with its glass eyes, which were actually enormous windows of the train station. The deep indigo blue of the glass was due to the mineral that was mined/processed in the factory. The train entered the station through the eye socket of the right face, which was still glassed in. Somehow the glass of that particular eye functioned as a gate and could slit into the wall to allow the train to enter. To reach the top of the hill where the decrepit, wooden and archaic buildings of the mine was, one had to take a very futuristic elevator. So, as I'm taking the train to the Goddess Head station, I got a vivid, no longer sepia-colored flashback of my lover fighting, fencing no less, with somebody on the roofs of the wagons. And then my alarm clock blares. I have a lesson, I ought to get up. But I need to know what happened. What would you do? Well, I just flopped back to my bed and, back in the dream, I took the manga I've been reading and flipped through the pages, speed reading to the end. There ought to be the battle on the wagons in greater details, the narrator's arrival to the mine where he, no longer I, my bloody alarm forced me to switch perspective, found the body of his lover, and a fire that my original dream avatar set to destroy the group of killers who had been waiting there to silence him. I'm not sure if my avatar survived and the details are fuzzy, but hey, I've got to know the intended end. My craziest dream experience ever. I always get really vivid dreams. This is the one that fits the question best. In the dream, some kind of new ice age seemed to have changed civilization as we knew it, burying all previous settlements in snow and ice. The people that remained lived in small isolated communities in giant semi-subterranean domes made of thick glass in the center and concrete bunkers around the edges. Some sort of vital delivery or communication had been interrupted between my settlement and the next nearest one, a month or so walk away. The man I loved in the dream, who was some sort of ranger that knew the hostile and icy lands well, had volunteered to go out to the other settlement to find out what was going on over 6 months ago but had not returned. In the time between him leaving and the present, I had found out about and had his child, something he did not know, and was beginning to give up hope that I'd see him again. In taking the child to the government offices to register for extra rations, I uncovered that the government of the dome were part of a regime/cult that hid the fact that the other domes communities had a plan to form a better and safer community in a fabled warm/safe spot by blocking communications. By doing this, the cult had absolute control over our dome and its citizens. The man I loved had discovered the truth and left for the other dome on a secret mission to get help, but the government had been sending out armed patrols to prevent his return. I returned home and was later woken up in the night by a firefight close to the dome between the government officials and the party the man I love would lead. I ran out into the cold and saw the man from across the snow. I shot range out but woke up before I could find out if it hit him or me. I wish I knew how it ended.